Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Blissful Life podcast. I am your host, Samantha Gregory, and today we have a really special topic about nervous system regulation and how that integrates and is important to radical self-care. My guest today is Tatiana Szulc, and we are going to be hearing her story about burnout and nervous system regulation and self-care. Welcome, Tatiana. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you so much for having me.
So, please tell us about your story, how you started on the pathway of nervous system regulation, why you needed to do that, and we'll get into how we can help other people integrate nervous system regulation into their lives as well.
Yeah, sure. My journey starts way back to my early years. I'm a complex trauma survivor. I've lived in survival mode my entire life,
Mhm.
going back to as early as 5 or 6 years old. I struggled significantly with chronic social anxiety, depression. I experienced suicidal ideation at one point. I have been in a domestic violent relationship. So I've been in survival mode for as long as I can remember. I got into the field of mental health because I wanted to help other people never feel the way I did growing up. And I also wanted to understand my body, my brain. I wanted to understand why I experienced the things that I experienced, but also why I was feeling the way that I was feeling and behaving the way that I was behaving and thinking the way that I was thinking. I ended up majoring in psychology and double majoring with human development and family studies. I absolutely fell in love with psychology, learning about the body and the brain. I knew at that point that I wanted to become a therapist. I ended up getting my master's in mental health counseling. Throughout this educational journey, I was still living in survival mode in this chronic state of anxiety. I had a lot of impulsivity. I was very reactive. I was dissociating a lot. And so I would dissociate in conversations with people. I would dissociate while I was driving. I experienced this deep level of shame and guilt because of my dissociation. And it really worsened when I was in grad school. It got to the point where I really struggled having relationships. I couldn't develop healthy friendships, especially in school, because of my chronic anxiety. I had this really negative perspective on relationships and the world, and I was really just numbing it out by doing really unhealthy things. I was also really young when I went into grad school and I became a therapist at the age of 23. I'm 32 now. And so I was kind of navigating how to have this career as a therapist and be professional while at the same time I'm this 23-year-old partying on the weekends and getting drunk on the weekends. It was really difficult. I was wearing a lot of different masks and it was hard to show up authentically. I had all of these emotional and trauma wounds that I hadn't addressed. After grad school, my first job as a therapist was at a community mental health agency. If anybody knows about community mental health, it is a lot of work and I wore many different hats. I wasn't just a therapist. Even though it was a lot on my nervous system, I think I had a lot of tolerance for it because
Mhm.
my nervous system was already in this chronic state of fight or flight. I always
Mhm.
wanted to work with the highest risk clients and asked my supervisor for more work. I needed constant stimulation because of my overactive nervous system. I was always on the go. And then 2020 came. We all started working from home, had no choice but to slow down. And naturally, I became so burnt out. My nervous system didn't know how to slow down. And so immediately, my nervous system fell into the state of freeze, which is where burnout lives. And we'll get into that a little bit more.
Mhm.
But I was so burnt out, unfulfilled. I was constantly dissociating, and I even debated if I wanted to be a therapist anymore. I had been working in community mental health for 4.5 years at that point. I told my supervisor how I was feeling, and she said, maybe you just need to do a training to get some inspiration. I was like, sure, let's do a training. I internally rolled my eyes, even though I loved her. She was amazing. I was like, I think I need more than just inspiration. I ended up Googling mind body trainings
Mhm.
and came across somatic experiencing. I had never heard of somatic experiencing before. I didn't know what it was. Like I said, I was in survival mode, so I was very impulsive, didn't do my research. I was like, oh, okay, this sounds good. I signed up to become a student, and I realized it was a 3-year program. The first training I attended blew my mind.
Mhm.
I finally started to understand why, no matter all of the therapy I did, why I was still experiencing what I was experiencing. I had tried cognitive behavioral therapy, I had tried EMDR, I had tried internal family systems, I had tried literally, it felt like everything, traditional talk therapy. And for some reason, I still felt, similar to you, Samantha, you were just on my podcast and we talked about this. I still had physical symptoms. It wasn't until I came across somatic experiencing that I was able to realize that I could shift out of survival mode. I understood why I was experiencing these symptoms. I understood my nervous system and that there was a way out.
Mhm.
Part of the somatic experiencing training requires you to do your own personal somatic experiencing sessions for your own nervous system. Once I started attending those sessions, my nervous system was finally able to shift out of survival mode, and I wasn't experiencing chronic social anxiety. I wouldn't even be able to have this conversation with you before. Even if somebody said, hey, Tatiana, I would quite literally go into a panic. My nervous system just responded in this way. My throat would close up. I
Mhm.
would get really red, really frozen, and I couldn't even respond back. That's how I came into the world of nervous system healing and regulation. Healing my nervous system opened up so many doors for me. I had thought that I was going to work in community mental health really for the rest of my life.
Okay.
Once I started to heal my nervous system, I started to feel like, oh my gosh, I can think outside of the box. I
Mhm.
can
Mhm.
actually do whatever I want in this world because I had more capacity in my body and nervous system.
I love that. You said so much, but I really appreciate you sharing your journey, being in survival mode, and not really knowing how to cope with what was happening in life, even though you went into psychology, even though you went into the mental health field and everything, but that still does not guarantee that you are a healed individual. It's so hard to do that, but you taking that class impulsively and that opening the door for you. I have a couple of questions for you. You said the word dissociate a couple of times, and a lot of people don't really know what that means. Could you share what that means and also talk about the mask and how those things are related?
Sure. So dissociation is really a disconnection from yourself or from others. A lot of people actually use the term disassociation, but the
Hmm.
correct term
Right.
is dissociation
Hmm.
because disassociation is when you're no longer associating yourself with something.
Yeah.
Dissociation is when we're talking about the trauma response. For me, the way that dissociation showed up was I would be in a conversation with someone and my mind would completely go blank, not in the zoning out kind of way, almost like I have no idea how much time had gone by. I had
Hmm.
no idea what happened in between that gap. It was completely like I'm here and now I'm not and now I'm back.
Hmm.
It happened so quickly and I remember I would brush it off and laugh about it, but inside I had this deep shame, this deep sense of like, are people judging me? Are people perceiving me differently? And I guess this ties into the masks that I would wear because I had all of these different masks where I was the entertainer, for example. I would make people laugh, and if people laughed, then that would mean that they liked me and they wouldn't
Mhm.
leave and they would still be my friend, right? And then I had this other mask where I would be almost like this people pleaser. I would be like the good girl, right? And then we go into the fawn state, right? And so I had all of these different masks of like, I would show up one way with one person or in
Mhm.
one setting, and then I would show up differently in another setting or with another person. Intentional. It
Mhm.
wasn't in the sense, because I know that when we talk about dissociation as well, we can often dissociate and have different personalities, but that's not what was happening with me. It was an intentional way for me to gain approval from other
Mhm.
people.
Right.
And I didn't know how to be, I didn't know how to embody who I was as a whole, right?
Mhm.
And so I almost had to be these different kind of people with different situations or different interactions or relationships.
Oh, I could totally relate to that. It's a survival mechanism that you
Mhm.
take on. And the crazy thing is, once you release those masks and really get back into balance, then you're left with, well, who am I? Because you
Mm,
don't really know who you are. Once
yeah.
you take those masks off, your nervous system is feeling good, etc. And then you have to go through the exercise of discovering who you are. Like you mentioned, the authenticity. Who am I authentically? I mean, I've been told I'm this, I'm that. I don't know.
Exactly. And I would show up based on how people labeled me. So if
Hmm.
you perceived me a certain way, I would show up as that.
Right.
When I became a therapist, it was like, oh, I had to be this professional therapist with this big career. My other mask was I'm a partier. So it was like two completely different people. And it's really hard to keep up with all of those masks instead of just being authentically you, which
Hmm.
again, I just didn't know what I didn't know. And I had no capacity to be my authentic self.
Hmm. Yeah, that makes so much sense. And I'm sure that was exhausting
Mhm.
because to show up as so many different people,
Exhausting. Yes.
right. And so now that you have gone through the somatics experience exercises, you're learning about nervous system regulation. How did you integrate it into your life, like on a regular basis? And did you see this as self-care for yourself?
Once I started understanding my nervous system, it just became who I am. I've been practicing somatic experiencing for 5 years now. I think the most fascinating thing about somatic experiencing and healing your nervous system is that you don't have to try so hard. Your nervous system knows exactly what it needs to do. Everything in your life is either supporting your nervous system or
Mhm.
dysregulating your nervous system. When you have more capacity in your body and your nervous system, you can live more intentionally, choosing things, people, and places in your life that support your nervous system as opposed to dysregulating your nervous system.
That's beautiful, brilliant. I love that because it's so true. You're now living in authenticity and you can say what works for you. You feel it in your body. This works for me or that doesn't work for me. And you can make
Mhm.
better choices, better decisions, showing up as your authentic self when you are in that space and state of my nervous system is calm. It feels good. I'm happy, to be who
Yeah,
I am and I'm not trying to please anyone else.
exactly. And you also learn your body is speaking to you all the time, giving you messages every single day. When you reconnect with your body and understand your nervous system, you start to understand the language of your nervous system. You start to understand what it's communicating to you,
Hmm.
right? Instead of wondering or instead of thinking that all of these symptoms are separate. So, for example, I have a lot of people that I work with that come in and they have migraines and they have back pain and they have, medical diagnoses and anxiety. They think all of these symptoms are separate, but they're not. They're
Hmm.
all tied into one thing. It's the nervous system,
Hmm.
right? And they're all connected, but we understand how we can better support our nervous system when we reconnect with the body.
I love that. And it's so unfortunate and sad because you don't know what you don't know. You've been in survival mode for so long that you don't even realize this is a body issue, because you, like you say, you have separate and society and then even the medical field teaches you that your mind and your body are separate and they are not the same. And all these symptoms may be this disease, it could be that condition, but it is literally your body sending you messages and red flags, waving all the signs for you to wake up, to please pay attention to me. And that it's not just physical, it is literally emotional, your nervous system, internal issues that are happening. And if you don't pay attention, it's going to lead to permanent damage to your body.
Yes. 1000% feel so passionate about spreading the message on nervous system healing because I think that we don't understand when people think about behavior and what's happening in your brain, your nervous system is responsible for all of your internal organs. That's your entire body, right? When we think about physical pain or any medical diagnosis, it can't be separate than emotions because your nervous system is responsible for it. And so it
Mhm.
is directly connected to the nervous system.
So, how can a person understand in simple terms, this is what's happening? Your nervous system is dysregulated. What are some of the triggers or signs that people can pay attention to and realize that my nervous system, even on your podcast, when I mentioned that I'd gone through all these different healing modalities, there was still something missing. There was still a block that I was experiencing. And I didn't know. I did not know until I came across a TikTok video that was like,
Yep.
the reason why your healing is not complete is because of your nervous system.
Yep.
So, how could I have figured it out earlier?
Oh, I know. And we all say that, right? Like, I wish we knew this sooner.
Yes.
But again, it goes back to you don't know what you don't know. So
Right.
I'll just share some signs for each state.
Okay.
Our survival states are fight, flight, and freeze. And I don't
Mhm.
talk about the fawn state because that's more of an adaptive state. That's a
Mhm.
learned state as opposed to a physiological state. Our physiological states are fight, flight, and freeze. When we're in a state of fight, we might experience more resistance to doing something. We might be more judgmental. We might have negative thoughts about ourselves or the world or others. We might feel more irritated most times than not, angry more times than not. We might feel road rage, right? How many cars do we see honking and yelling? That is the fight state. But the fight state can also show up internally. We don't have to act out with aggression if we feel those angry feelings or irritation or even getting defensive. Internally, that's still the fight state. If you ever catch yourself clenching your jaw or fists, that's the fight state. If you notice muscle tension or
Mhm.
burning sensations in your stomach, that is also the fight state. So, those are a few examples of fight. Flight is the most common one for a lot of people. The flight state is anxiety,
Mhm.
over worrying, hypervigilance, negative thoughts, fears, fear of people judging us, fear of abandonment, all of that falls into the state of flight. Racing heartbeat, that knot in your throat that you get when I would go into panic mode and when people would talk to me, that was the
Mhm.
flight state. Avoidance, this tendency to want to just avoid, that's flight.
Mhm.
Restlessness, feeling like you have excess energy in your body, that's also the flight state. Cricket leg, or like when people are fidgeting all the time,
Mhm.
that is also flight. Freeze. So the freeze state is where burnout lives.
Okay.
That's where depression lives. That's where chronic fatigue, exhaustion live. When you feel stuck and you feel like you can't take action, like logically, you know all of the things that you're supposed to do, but for some reason, you can't get yourself to do it,
Mhm.
that's the freeze state. Feeling emotionally or physically numb, that's also freeze.
Yes, beautiful. Thank you for that because I think it's so important for people to know what those symptoms and signs look like so that they can
Mhm.
start to correct it. And not because they're trying to fix themselves, but because they're just trying to get in a better state of physical, emotional, mental well-being because
Yeah.
we're out of homeostasis. The balance is not there. And balance is not just work and life. Balance is in your body. Balance is the
Mhm.
emotional state. Balance is your nervous system. What are some simple things that a person can do to begin? Because I know nervous system regulation is not a one and done thing. It takes time because if it took time for you to get here, it'll take time to heal that. So, what are a
Yeah.
couple of things that people can do to begin to relieve that nervous system pressure that they're feeling?
Yes, I love this question. You bring up such an important point about balance. The word regulation gets misinterpreted because I think that a lot of people think that regulation means calming the nervous system. And I,
Mhm.
I also just want to remind people that regulation just means that it means balance. And so
Mhm.
regulation doesn't mean that you're going to be calm all of the time.
Yeah.
Regulation and healing your nervous system actually means that your nervous system can go into states of survival and then come back to a
Mhm.
parasympathetic state or like a
Mhm.
calm or a grounded state as opposed to getting stuck in these survival states. As a reminder, we need balance, and that's what your nervous system is trying to do all the time.
Mhm.
So, in order to do that, we need to create safety in the body, safety in the nervous system, because the nervous system doesn't use logic.
Right.
That's why we can do all of the talk therapy, we
Mhm.
can do all of the
Mhm.
cognitive based healing modalities, but if we're not addressing the body, then we're not really going to get that deep level of healing because our nervous system only speaks the language of physical sensation. And
Mhm.
so, in order to create safety in the body, we can't just tell ourselves, I'm safe, I'm safe, I'm
Right.
safe. That's not going to do anything to the nervous system. You have to show the nervous system through physical sensation that you are safe.
Mhm.
And when the nervous system feels in the body that you are safe, then it can start that healing process. One of my favorite ways to create safety in the body is doing a VU sound. So a
Mhm.
VU sound stimulates the vagus nerve, which is the
Mhm.
primary nerve of the parasympathetic nervous system.
Mhm.
Anytime we stimulate the vagus nerve, we're going to feel a little bit more safe and calm and relaxed. The VU sound is just breathing in, and then on the exhale, we do a VU all the way until the breath is out, and then we just pause and notice the body. If you're in a state of fight or flight, usually your nervous system is going to calm back down to a parasympathetic state. And if you're in a freeze state, so if we're talking like burnout, chronic fatigue, exhaustion, you might feel a little bit more alive and alert and awake.
Mhm.
So it works both ways. That's the VU sound. That's one of my favorite ways to support the body. And you can do that every single day. You can do it in the shower, while you're driving, literally while you're doing any task,
Mhm.
and it's almost like an immediate reset. You can do one VU sound or three in a row, but the key
Mhm.
is always to do it intentionally and slowly.
I like that. I know one that I heard was similar. They said humming is a great way to, calm and regulate the nervous system when you're
Yeah.
in fight, flight, freeze, just humming. And growing up, I used to sing and I sing in the mornings with my music. It calms you down. It makes you feel relaxed. I love the sound in the body resonating up and down and back and forth that really kind of and how sound music is such a regulator, I guess,
Yeah.
for lack of a better word. That's
Yeah.
amazing.
Because humming, singing, music, that vibration again is stimulating that vagus nerve. So
Hmm.
anytime we can access or stimulate the vagus nerve, we're going to feel a little bit safer.
Love that. Thank you for sharing that. I know there's so many more, and you sure you have programs and you can help people with their nervous system regulation. But before we go into that, I just want you to share, other than survival mode, like what are other ways that people's nervous system get dysregulated?
So earlier I said everything in your life is either supporting your nervous system or
Right.
dysregulating your nervous system, right? And
Hmm.
I mean everything.
Hmm.
And that goes for the food that you're eating, your daily habits, the relationships you're in, your work environment, your home environment. The list can go on. Think of every single thing in your life and think about whether it's either supporting your nervous system or dysregulating your nervous system. And if it makes you feel unsafe in any way, or it makes your maybe not logically or consciously unsafe, but if your body just feels a little off anytime you're in these situations or with someone or when you eat something, the list can go on. I'm thinking about your basic physiological needs too, right? Like, are you getting enough nutrients and are you getting enough sleep? All of those things,
Hmm.
right? If your body starts to feel off, then that's a good indicator that it's dysregulating your nervous system instead of supporting your nervous system. And so it is going back to being more intentional about who you're surrounding yourself with, what you're surrounding yourself with, and are you nourishing your body in the way that it needs to fully taking a look at our daily habits,
Right.
right? Are we moving our body? Are we getting nutrients in? Are we getting sun? Just like our basic needs, right? Trauma is definitely, right, when we think about traumatic experiences, that is definitely going to impact our bodies, but it's also just like everything in our daily lives that's also
Mhm.
contributing to nervous system dysregulation.
That's so true. I love that. Is it supporting me or is it not? Sometimes that's hard to determine because if you've been in survival mode for so long, or if you're in unhealed trauma mode for so long, it's hard because it feels normal to be dysregulated. Hopefully, these conversations will help them become aware, because awareness is the beginning of the process of regulating the nervous system. So share with us what you offer, like what people, how they can contact you or stay in communication with you and be a part of your world and the things that you offer.
Yeah, sure. So I have a few different ways that you can connect with me. First, I have a podcast. It's called She is Resilient, which Samantha was just a guest on. So go check out that episode. Samantha was on my podcast, She is Resilient, and I dive deeper into trauma healing, somatic healing, nervous system healing, and holistic ways to support the nervous system. If you want to learn more about this topic, check out my podcast. I have a free community. We meet monthly, and I guide you through somatic practices to support your nervous system. That's a monthly meeting on the third Tuesday of every month. I also have my free nervous system guide where I teach you the 6 steps to healing your nervous system. So if you're like, okay, I understand that I need to heal my nervous system, but I have no idea where to start, these are my 6 steps that I go through with every single one of my clients. For lower cost, I have my somatic bundle where you can purchase for 47 bucks and it's just 30 plus somatic tools to create that safety in your body and support your nervous system. These are daily practices, just like the VU sound that I shared, that you can practice every single day. I also have text and voice note support similar to Samantha, but again, it is geared towards nervous system healing. So it's like answering your nervous system and trauma healing questions. And that is called back pocket healing because you got me in in your back pocket.
Okay.
And then if you're like, okay, Tatiana, I don't need coping, I need this deep level of healing. I am ready to thrive and live outside of survival mode, then that's when I have my private somatic experiencing sessions. And so I like to think about all of the offers that I just listed are there really when you're first starting your healing journey, your somatic healing journey. And these are short-term, uh, it's short-term relief. It's helping you learn how to support your nervous system and really just cope, right?
Mhm.
And then my somatic experiencing sessions, these are 90-minute sessions where we are really working directly with your nervous system to change your physiology, going back to that balance that Samantha was talking about, right? It's helping your nervous system return to that balance, changing and rewiring your physiology so that you can finally thrive outside of survival mode.
Awesome. Beautiful. And of course, we'll have all the links to those offers, how to connect with you. Are you on social media? Like, where can they find you on social media?
I'm actually not on social media. I was on Instagram for a long time. I actually had a pretty good following too. And then I deleted my Instagram altogether
Okay.
in February for some political reasons.
Understandable.
Unfortunately, I'm not on social media, but I think there are so many ways that you can connect with me.
Sure. We'll have all those links for you so you can connect with Tatiana because this is a foundational part of self-care and the healing journey so that you can come out on the other side feeling happy, healthy, and whole because you really deserve that. I just want to thank you again, Tatiana, for being on the Blissful Life podcast today, for sharing your journey, burnout, nervous system dysregulation to regulation, and some of the strategies and tips we can use specifically to not just heal it, but also recognize what it looks like because awareness is key. So,
Mhm.
thank you again for being with us today, having this conversation. I look forward to even more conversations with you and more guests as we help people transform their burnout into bliss. Thank
Thank
you
you
all
so
for
much.
listening.
Thank you for having me on your platform. I really appreciate you, and I'm glad to be here. Thank you.
Absolutely. And so, for the rest of us, let's make sure that we are paying attention to what's happening in our bodies so that we can heal, transform, and walk in our bliss every single day. Take care. Be sure to like, subscribe, and share this podcast with someone else because I'm sure they probably need it too. We'll talk to you again next time. Be well.